Everybody ready? Okay. There we go. Okay, so welcome to Public Safety Committee meeting, Thursday, May 19th, 2020, 4:30 p.m. I'd like to recognize that all of our committee is here except Angela Moore. And may I have motion for approval in minutes, please? Down. There you go.
I got it. Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda first, right?
We usually do both at the same time if you want, unless, okay, you don't want to. Well, do one.
I'd like to move to approve the agenda for the May 19th, 2020 Public Safety Committee meeting as written.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I'll second it. All right, okay. So Savino seconded it. If you'd like to put that in the paper, please, in the minutes. So I have a first and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay. So now we need approval of the minutes.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes from the Public Safety Committee meeting that was on April 14th, 2020 as written.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second? I have a second from Savino, yes? On the minutes? Okay, I have a second from Savino Sanchez on the minutes. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Regular items. Consider Resolution 20XX condemnations. Hello, Bill.
Hi, thank you.
Good.
This is for approval of resolution for the condemnation of 18 properties that are listed within the agenda package, starting on 8 and also on 9. These sites have all been determined to be public nuisances, harmful to public health, safety, and general welfare because of their status. As normal, we would like to have these placed on the consent agenda also with an approval if possible, and stand for any questions about any particular properties.
Okay, do we have any questions?
I do.
Yes,
Madam
ma'am.
Chair. I'm just curious, 5 of these properties, you have the name of the owner or person, whatever, at those properties. Is that because that's the only address you have? Nobody really lives in these, or do they?
It shouldn't be, but
That's, yeah. Sorry, Bill.
Counselor, a lot of those properties, that's the only address listed
Okay.
with the county assessor, and the reason is because a lot of those sometimes are foreclosed upon, and it takes the bank a while to get it back in their names. And so by law, we have to send who the county has as the legal owner.
Right.
And then, unfortunately, some of the others could be deceased as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So I can assume then that when they are the same, that it's only because it's the last listing that you have, not that there's an occupant in
Yeah.
any of these
Correct.
buildings. Okay, just wanted to clarify that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I have none. None? Okay. Okay, so I need a motion to put this on the consent agenda.
I move that we put the resolution with the condemnations on the consent agenda for the June City Council meeting with the recommendation to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion and I have a second. I have a second by Savino Sanchez. Now that we have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We have an aye all the way around. Passes. Consider amendment of Chapter 16 to the nuisance laws. So before we go there, are there any questions with our information and department updates? Because we're going to take a while on the nuisance. So do we have any questions with the department updates?
I didn't have any.
You didn't have any questions? No?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
we provided in your packet the monthly report for each of the departments. I do have those staff members here. Typically, when we're at a normal meeting, each department will give a report on one topic that they were working on for the month to kind of update you, bring you up to date on it. Many of them are available here. If there's anything you would like to hear from any of them or asking questions, they're available to help. But
Okay. I have no questions. Ms. Judy?
Madam Chair, I don't either. I just want to say how much I appreciate the detailedness of these reports. I mean, it tells me a lot, and I appreciate that from all of you. I have no questions at this time.
You good? Okay, we're all good. So all of our department heads, if you're in the other room and you don't want to sit through this, sorry. If you want to sit through this, it's all good. So we are going to move on to our consider amendments to Chapter 16 in the nuisance. Mr. Matthews, your turn.
okay, counselors, thank you. We've been putting this on the agenda for the last couple of months, and our plan was to attack it kind of as we did the animal control ordinance last year. We took it, brought it through this committee, and then we went line by line through the animal control ordinance with input from the community. Many of the rescue groups showed up and had their input, and I think we developed, with that process, a really good document. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better document than what we had before, I believe. So we were hoping to do the same thing with Section 16. I know Code Enforcement Department, this is their main section that they function out of, and they've been wanting to update it for a number of years. We've just really not taken the opportunity or the time to do it through a committee, and we would like to start that process now. The way we did it on animal control was that we basically went line by line through it, and we discussed different ones. At any time the committee got ready to quit or call it a day, we stopped there. And back then we had 2 attorneys. Now we just have 1 attorney. So Parker's not here with us. So Bill is going to be the one that is taking all the notes. And the next month, the recommendations that we put or the input that we receive from the committee, he will put that into writing with red lines and information, and we'll go back and review the changes that we make this month, our recommendations, and just keep moving forward month by month. And if it takes 5 months, it's okay. If it takes 6 months, it's okay. We just want to come out with a good document that is very usable by our code enforcement department and beneficial to our community so that they understand it, our citizens understand it, and our code enforcement officers are able to use it. Also included in here, I didn't provide, Mr. Bartlett did, a list of all the other sections of the code that they enforce different things out of. So at some point in time, we'll review those and whether or not we need to update, for example, Section 751, maximum length of a garage sale. If we need to talk about that, it may be good where it's at, but if we need to make some changes to that, that would be a different section of the city code that we would need to update and change. So with that, we're ready to go.
Okay. We seem to do it really good in the animal control. So what I did, Ms. Judy, we also had to work with other people in the animal control because of all the Humane Society and all that. So we're pretty blessed at this point just to work with the crowd we have. So we're going to start with page 12. It's numbered with my packet number, page 12. And we have red lettering coming up, 3, 4, and 5.
And if I could make a note on that red lettering, those are some of the ideas that the Code Enforcement Department, they went ahead and plugged them in as just as talking points. So if
Okay.
they're in red, that's some areas that they would like to see discussed and
Okay.
some changes made. So that's what that is, just for reference.
Okay, so I'm not reading it line by line out loud,
Thank you.
because that might take forever.
Thank you.
So is there anything on this that you would like to speak about? I like that the tall grass was added, because I have a lot of people that say they got a ticket for, we say it's weeds and they say it's grass, and so I like that addition. Ms. Judy, what do you see that you'd like to talk about?
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm just curious, when you've added, for example, in section 16.2, 3, 4, and 5, is there language that goes along with this, or was the intent that this be self-explanatory? I'm sorry.
Counselor, I'm sorry. It's just kind of an idea we had, and looking at other ordinances that other municipalities are using. It's really very broad at this time. There's no language. The code enforcement officers run into a lot of things that they don't have an ordinance for. Some of those things might include generators being ran on the property, things like that. Could be something that they don't normally come across, some kind of waste material or something like that. Unfortunately, we are having property owners now that we're getting more and more of that, kind of different kinds of waste and stuff. Needles, noise, smells, a lot of times smells and there's no ordinance that covers that, but it could be something that we want to look at moving forward. So the language, there's really no specific language. It's just kind of ideas that we put down, and we made it very broad, but we can discuss that if we need to fill that in.
Okay.
Counselor, this particular section, the first section there is really kind of intent to be kind of a whereas, or, just kind
Oh,
of setting the
okay.
stage. Those three, so you got 5 things that are generally not good for us, and these is what we'll be looking to address, these general constraints.
Okay. Thank you.
So if we agree to these, are we just going to okay them and then you're going to explain them, put a definition behind them a little later on? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so
We can do that.
I agree with 3.
Yeah.
4 and 5, I mean, it makes sense. Miss Judy, do you agree with those 4 or 3?
I do. I'd like just a little better explanation of 4. Is it going to be like anything that depreciates, or is there going to be more of a definition?
I think, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's yours.
They have recently updated their zoning codes, but things would be, we have people burying toilets in their front lawn and planting flowers, and we get a lot of complaints about things like that. Tire fences, pallet fences,
Okay.
those kind of things. Like I said, it's really broad now. We'd have to really talk about it and go into some detail. And then the graffiti, I wanted to say now, as a service to the community, the city takes care of the graffiti. It's very costly, very time-consuming, and it might be something that we want to put in there and be able to get the owners to take care of that, when we can.
So, Madam Chair, I agree with you that I like the addition of these 3 and would like to see a little further explanation on what they actually would be.
Yes, you're using your example as the tires and the pallets and stuff. You also have to keep in mind there's artsy-fartsy people out there that think tires and pallets are the ticket and the toilet in the
And
front yard.
toilets.
So that is going to be a fine line you're going to have to walk, for sure. Okay, so we'll go on down to the tall grass, and are there any questions on that?
Oh, I think that's
Okay.
good.
Okay, and they pretty much explained it in B. So I think 12 is okay for now? Page 12, okay. Okay, so let's go on to 13. I have marked just section 16-6 on B. I just remembered when I read that about the gentleman over on Union that the older lady's complaining about that has his house, but yet it's construction. Just put that in your head in case you need to check on that one again.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Judy, anything? Okay. Okay, then we're going to go on to page 14. 13 seems to be okay. Okay. Ms. Judy, what do you think of the state law reference being stricken? Oh, I guess I need to go back up
We've
to
got
E
a
and F. I'm
couple,
sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like just a little explanation of each of the additions, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am. And now we actually have owners inhabiting properties that do not have water service or utilities. They may be using the neighbor's water with the neighbor's permission to flush their toilets, things like that. It's hard for me to believe that someone without active water service could live in what we would deem a sanitary and safe manner. Also, they are using our dumpsters. They're using our sewers. And so if they're not connected to that water, if they're not paying that rate, I mean, they're still utilizing those services. And so the main thing being sanitary, and then secondly, they're still utilizing the sewer and the dumpster, which is part of that water bill. So if they're not connected, it's kind of, right now, there's no enforcement as far as we can't, even if it's unsanitary in there, the building inspectors are not able to make them leave that house or get their utilities turned on. There's no law against it. So we'd like to add that in there. And the main reason being because it should be sanitary and it should be lit to keep it safe for their sake and for the neighbor's sake.
Well, and it's also a public hazard due to the fact that some of these families have children that live in there, and they're living in what I want to call squalor.
Yes.
That's just what I call it. Miss Judy, was that okay?
No, that's fine. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
The next one was outside storage of excessive items also prohibited. And I'm going to assume that would be something like on Union where you've got extra pipe stacked up in the backyard.
Correct, Counselor. If the officer deemed that it was excessive, or I'll tell you a problem that we've ran into is, let's say someone moves and they pile their carport all the way up to the top and all the way up to the back with boxes and things, which is fine until it becomes a problem or a nuisance. Let's say it's been there a year. It's not really stuff in those boxes. It's unsanitary. It could be, to them it's valuable. And it's not unsanitary, but it does become a problem. The neighbors complain, number one, it's unsightly. Number two, the rodents, the insects, I mean, they tend to go to places like that. And so that's why the unnecessary outside storage. And then, of course, the one on Union as well, like you said.
Okay.
Could I ask a question? And I'm assuming there's some kind of fine line between what we can call a nuisance or call excessive or call unsanitary. Do we have those definitions? Are they defined somewhere?
Ma'am, it would be hard to define. I mean,
That's it.
you can't put a weight on it. You can't put a number on it. Some things are just unsightly. Some things have just been there for too long. They might be collecting rainwater, or old boxes might start to be getting deteriorated and blow all over the place. It's hard to define that. We do define it in the litter section. We do define it very well in the unsanitary premises section. But, if you've got somebody that's say collecting pallets, I keep using pallets because we run into them all the time, and they have 180 pallets in their backyard with no intention of using them for anything, that's excessive outside storage to us.
I think common sense may be a good thing for our officers to use also. Just common sense.
Yes, ma'am. And
Madam Chair.
They're very good at that.
One of the ways that it'd be determined would be code enforcement. If they filed on somebody in municipal court, they would take photographs of that, and the judge would determine if he also deemed it to be excessive or whatever. They'd have to convince the judge that, and the defendant would convince that it's not. But so the judge would have the final say so.
Okay. Thank you.
And one of the issues that is also kind of dovetails into this is that on the zoning side, there's provisions within the zoning code with intent to keep certain areas open, just to prevent, so piling stuff in also would be a violation of the zoning code standards for like the rear, how much open space is supposed to be in backyards and that sort of thing. So there's other parts of this that'll all have to mesh together as we go through this.
Okay.
But definitions clearly.
So that takes me to another question. This then would not be, I can't say, duplicative of zoning,
No, but it would be assisting or
complementing each other.
complementing, yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. So E and F, we just need you to finish those up. Down to code 16-25, state law references. Explain to me why you've stricken that whole thing, please.
This is all covered by the ETZ, and these are, if you look at some of these uses, they're talking about people that are, I'm not sure, a carbon black plant within 5 miles is not something that we can regulate what's outside of our boundaries. There's a couple of those, the slaughterhouses, the spitting and outdoors, and I'm not sure about the conducting or participating in the physical endurance. Is that where they hold onto a car for as long until the last one drops, they get the car? But these are kind of things that I think most are kind of outside of the purview of what this is intended to be. It's in the ETZ primarily. Those are the big things that are in here. And the cesspool, hopefully we don't have too many left.
Okay. Miss Judy, you good?
Just, is this the way statute reads right now?
No, I don't think this is in here. I mean, this stuff is covered by our ETZ, which came into effect in the earlier 80s. I mean, that is what the ETZ would regulate, things inside that,
Right.
outside of our boundaries, so.
Right. Okay,
And we don't have, we can't sell to somebody that can't come in or outside of our
okay, that's
municipal
fine.
boundaries.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have no changes. So we'll go ahead and okay 14, page 14. We have no changes on 15, 16, 17. When we hit 18, we have some more red lettering. So, Miss Judy, I don't know if you've read all this. Have you read?
I have perused.
You've perused. Do we want to peruse that it's okay and move on, or do we want to bring these pages back next time?
I'd like to see, I mean, I'm assuming we're going to expound on this a little bit. I'd still like to see it. but-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to 18, down to 7. Does anybody want to explain that for us?
7 is just it's the noise issue.
Okay.
Running a generator in a residential area that we have. It's just annoying. And the intent is to kind of not to basically overtax or burden other property owners. And the noise ordinance, I like block parties approved by, that's exempt. We don't have,
That's an exception.
That would be the
And so they're doing it now, that it's allowed, it's just was never in the ordinance.
Okay.
And so the PD is permitting that. People can call ahead, have a block party, they can ask for traffic control, where we set up barriers, not an officer on site. But it's just something that I'd like to put in there, that it must be approved by the Roswell Police Department.
So all those cars going down Montana over up to Sonic by my house and their little loud mufflers and stuff, can I get license plates?
Where's the chief at? The chief
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah,
We'll let him cover
Aye.
that, Counselor.
Okay, Miss Judy, what are you thinking?
I'm fine with both of these, and I don't think they need any further explanations.
Okay.
So I think they're okay the way they're written,
Okay.
these two.
Okay. Okay, when we move on to page 19, so we're going to okay 18 as it is, and they don't need explanation, so that ought to save a little bit. So we're going to go on to page 19, and we start at 16-11 with some red lettering. Owner of tenant must have active water. There you go. It's the same thing as before.
Right, and basically, we're adding that in, Counselor, because this section does cover dwellings unfit for human habitation, so we'd like to add it in there as well.
Okay. Miss Judy, what are you thinking?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay, and down on C, we have just the words code enforcement.
What that is, Counselor, is for long before my time when the ordinance was written, it was written that all these powers prescribed by the ordinance would need to be worked by the, or approved by the Planning and Zoning Committee, which in my time here, the Planning and Zoning Committee they've never handled any of this. It wasn't under their purview. It was strictly code enforcement, the building officials and the officers.
Okay. And then we want to remove urban development law?
Actually, I found the citation, and it's actually under municipal powers. So it's Article 3-46, and that's urban development. And originally, this whole section here it's still in code. The original documentation was like about 45 or 50 individual sections within this section, because you know how in the old days, they would have like one sentence would be in section 1, and then another part would be section 2. So all this has been collected. So, but all this is almost verbatim out of state statutes, this particular section out of section 3-46. And so maybe we can get with Parker to make sure that it's still legally consistent, because that's really his part of in the enforcement part of this, and come up with a way to cite that section in state statutes as it's currently sitting.
You good, Ms. Judy?
Well, yes, you're just talking about in C1. Also, are you talking about D?
A lot of this is basically coming out of that section 3-46-43, New Mexico State's annotated, which is all of this.
Okay.
Originally, it was in multiple sections, and like I said,
Right.
about 10 years ago, they collapsed it all into one subsection in the state statute. So I think it's all still valid, but I would say Parker doesn't have much to do right now, so maybe when he has time, he can look at it.
I bet. So I was going to say, so both of these will go to Parker for review, right?
I would say that
Good.
it's all enforcement intended for the attorney, but trying also to find out a good way to replace urban development law, if you want to put
Right.
it in state statutes or whatever he'd be comfortable with for enforcement purposes.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, and if you want to describe down on D, we've got some red lines. Remove, 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 all the way down to 2.
Mhm.
And that's what we were just speaking of, isn't it? Okay, you good with 19? Okay, so let's move on to 20. We start with redlining Planning and Zoning Committee members as stricken and City Council is written in. Okay. Code enforcement. Mr. Bartlett, you get thrown in there. Ms. Judy, any questions?
No, I'm okay with both
Okay.
E and E1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, actually,
Good job.
where because there is no longer a planning and zoning committee.
Correct. So page 20 is okay? Okay, 21 has nothing on it that I can see. 22, we are removing private.
The city does not allow for, they will not pick up private receptacles, just the city provided.
We don't have any of Southwest in the city limits, do we? That's all out in the county, right?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Isn't it Southwest, the green one's Southwest Disposal?
No,
That-
waste
Oh,
management.
yeah.
Oh,
Waste
isn't it
waste
waste
management?
Yeah.
Yeah, all they do in the city, and I know this because we just looked up their franchise agreements, they do commercials. They do some commercial stuff in the
Okay.
city.
Okay. So everything else belongs to the city, whether it's the small 90-gallon or the great big ones?
Correct.
Okay. So 22 is okay? 23? So I have a problem with this one. no person shall blow excessive leaves or clippings into the gutter. Am I going to be excluded from that?
Absolutely, Counselor.
Yes. Anyway, I'm sorry, just a little humor.
You know, we have street sweepers that do great jobs. They do a great job, but we are getting more and more complaints about it, and it starts to become excessive to where it does clog up the gutters. And the problem is they don't blow it into the gutters in front of their own home. They either blow it across the street into the gutters or to the neighbor's house.
But that's the fun afternoon. thing.
Right,
He's blowing
right.
his way, I'm blowing my way, you know, we meet in the middle.
Right. So we thought if we put that in there, it's something that if it's a situation that becomes a problem, we'll be able to address it.
Be able to address it. Okay, I'm good with that. Miss Judy?
Well, I am too, but I don't know why the first part of that section doesn't say just that, where it says no person shall sweep into or deposit in any gutter, street, or other public, private place.
Because the word sweeps there.
I believe, Counselor, because it says the accumulation of litter, and it doesn't include weeds or the
Okay,
clippings.
so you want to include,
Yeah, we would like to
Okay.
include the leaves and the clippings, because normally leaves and clippings they don't become a violation until they start to clog up the gutters,
Sure.
or you're blowing them constantly into your neighbor's yard,
okay,
or gutter, I'm sorry.
I'm fine with that addition.
Okay. Okay, so page 24, the no person shall throw litter into the flood control. What does this pertain to for the homeless? This is my problem. We've got the canals, we have a lot of homeless in there, and I'm finding an issue with that. So I know this doesn't pertain to that, but can we go down and say, you're leaving too much stuff, you need to get it and pack it out?
We have, Counselor, in the past, and yes, absolutely. But it's not just the homeless. If we have a lot of roofing permits out, you wouldn't believe the people who are throwing shingles into these drainage areas, pouring oil into these draining areas, and it's all over town. Any drainage or any channel, they feel like it belongs to the city, but it is maintained normally by county flood control for the most part. But they figure it belongs to the city, we'll throw it here and they'll pick it up. And so that's
Okay.
the purpose of this.
Sorry. When you say drainage area, that includes some of these ponding areas?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm fine.
ready? Okay, so 24 is good. Okay, 25, I have a word by it, just says define. Because we do have a rule, well, no, this is about handbills. I'm not quite sure everybody's going to understand what a handbill is. I do, but, and I'm sure you do. Well, I'm old too. But in today's world, they don't do it as much because they have social media, but still they're putting stuff on cars, so. Is there another definition for handbill? Handout? I mean, I don't know.
It's tricky, counselors, because we want to be pro-business, we want to be super business-friendly, we want to help businesses. A lot of the handbills that get placed on vehicles are not local people that are paying their gross receipts tax and or have permits, things like that. Could be a lot of fly-by-night stuff. And the problem with it is when it does become an issue, they take them off the windshield and they throw them in the parking lot.
That's true.
They throw them in the street. And so it's not something that I would say, encounter a whole lot, but it is something that if it does become an issue, we might think about putting it in there to be able to address it and have some teeth. Because right now, there's not a whole lot that prohibits that.
Do we need to put mask and gloves on this too?
Yes, ma'am.
PPE?
Hopefully not for much longer.
Exactly.
Madam Chair, the word handbills goes back to page 24, section 16-27. So if we're looking specifically, and I sort of agree with you, handbills, I mean, I know what they are, but
maybe advertising to go along with it? Handbill advertisement?
I'll tell you, we had a problem with like the dent repair when we had the bad hail.
Oh.
Had a lot of dent repair companies, and they would hire these kids and hand them stacks of these, and they would go all over town. You know, you go east, you go north, south, and they would put them under every windshield wiper that they came across. And we were finding a good deal of those blowing into bushes, blowing onto other people's property, into the gutters, things like that. So that's kind of what we consider handbills, but we could break it down and be specific
No,
if we
could look
needed
at the
to.
definition of handbill maybe and see if there's, I was gonna ask somebody to Google it, I don't have my
Jill.
phone.
The minute you type in handle, it says a small printed advertisement or other notice distributed by hand.
Printed material and, or notice, yeah,
Printed material work.
printed material.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Advertisement,
Okay.
So,
thank you.
so if we could, yeah, like I say, go back right up to 16-26 and change handbill everywhere it is, bill.
We'll add a definition in there at the beginning.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay?
good
perfect.
idea.
Then snuck down in there in 16-29, there is a little, 2 words, it says traffic sign. On page 25 still. You good with that, Miss Judy?
Fine.
Just posting this.
Did you find it?
I'm
Okay,
fine.
you're good? Okay, so we'll move on to page 26. Ooh, I'm starting to like that. This is where we need more teeth on these abandoned cars. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes, ma'am.
So valid registration is good, but we still, let's see, we still have in here that they need to run and go forward and backward. I almost think they need to be able to run around the block.
Counselor, now, we do have the Inoperable Vehicle Ordinance, which is 1636, and that does require that you be able to start that vehicle, move it back and forth under its own power. What this is addressing, and I put question marks here because I know it's going to be a tough one, but you can have 20 cars in your lawn. They do not have to be registered. They do not have to be insured as long as they run. And we do have, I mean, excessive properties. They may have 10 cars, but they all run and they're not being used. So there's nothing by law that we can do to address that now. We get complaints daily. Right down the street here, we get complaints daily. Hey, they've got 20 cars. The officers have been out at that location many, many times, and they've proved that these cars are actually operable. So they're not breaking the law right now. I feel like if maybe we looked into having them pay insurance or registration, that's one way that, I mean, and really, it's against the law to drive any vehicle on the street or put it on the street. Can't park it on the street now without valid insurance or registration. So I think maybe in our problem cases, that might help. That might be a way to address that, because if I had to pay insurance on 20 cars and registration on 20 cars, I sure wouldn't be storing anything that I didn't have to have. And we're not stopping people from working on vehicles or restoring a vehicle. We have a permit process in place for that. So, if you're working on a hot rod, we're not going to stop you from doing that. But if you've got 20 cars in your front lawn and on the side and in the backyard that have been there for a long time, then maybe that's something we need to look at.
Do we need to specify on residential property? Or is it a problem on I'm just thinking of
No,
a
ma'am,
parking lot.
I think we could certainly do that. We do not have any problems with vehicles being on commercial properties, other than there is a section in here that we'll address later, vehicle sales.
Yeah,
Now
that's another thing,
vehicle
yeah.
sales,
Right.
we need to address that, but that's a whole different section.
In the zoning world, it's all about the residential areas and cars and work trucks and how many cars can you have. Trying to get down, let's say, Delicata in front of Linda Vista Park is just a nightmare. After 5 o'clock, when all the trucks come back, everybody comes back,
Yeah.
you barely have a one-way flow.
Right.
And so we spent 6 months working just on work trucks within the zoning code, within the Planning and Zoning Commission, because it's how do you allow for these kinds of things, or do you regulate them? How do you, and the idea came up, we started with, how do you deal with how many does a property able to have? And we gave up on that one real
Yeah.
fast. It's hard in a town like this. I mean, a lot of the properties were platted starting in the 40s through the 80s and into the 90s, and things have changed. Now everybody over the age of 16 has a car, and plus a truck, and you've got RVs everywhere, fifth wheels, and all this is supposed to be fit in here. So this will be an interesting section, and it's one that has to mesh with the planning part of this thing, or the zoning part,
Good.
which the guys have already been working on that side. So this will be interesting.
So if it doesn't limit you, I'd like for it to say residential property.
Yes, ma'am.
If-
It wouldn't limit us at all. I don't see
It
that
would
as
or
being a
would not?
problem.
It would limit you?
No, ma'am, it would not. We
Okay.
do not have a problem
Okay.
with commercial property now. And we've got the maximum number of vehicles there. That's not our preferred way to address this, but I did put it in there because it might be something that may be the way the council wants to address this. But, if you've got 6 kids at home and they all drive, it could be a problem depending on the number the council decided to go with. So, but we did include it in there for your consideration. Just another way to kind of control this.
Madam Chair?
Sure.
Your next line there, you're questioning the right-of-way, and I certainly think that has to be mentioned. It's mentioned in zoning, if
Well-
I'm not mistaken, isn't it?
The-
And that's part of my concern is there's so many places that have all these vehicles you're referring to actually parked in the right-of-way. It's
Right,
their-
or
not
on
necessarily
the
their
street.
property.
Or on the
Or their
street.
street.
And what I'm trying to do here, Counselor, with the last line is code enforcement officers have no jurisdiction to address anything in the street. It falls under Roswell Police Department's traffic code. But my people deal with inoperable vehicles every day. I'm not asking that we be able to address any vehicle parked in the street, but if it's dismantled in the street, if there's weeds growing up around it, if it's obviously inoperable in the street, I think that would free our police department up to do other things if my officers were able to address those situations. And of course, we would provide notice just like we do everything else before having that towed. But right now, we will notify the owner, but we have to call police officers out to actually have that vehicle removed off the right-of-way or off the street. And so if we could take care of some of that, I think it would free up our officers for other things.
I think it's hard to define, Madam Chair, the maximum number of vehicles allowed. I know you've got a question mark there, because I think a lot of that is determined by the size of the property, or I'm thinking if you've got a circular drive and those are all on your drive,
Yes, ma'am.
so there's,
I'm finding that hard, too.
to be able to define
Right.
by saying maximum numbers, but,
But then again, down the street, you're looking at 20, and the weeds are still growing up around them, even though they can move forward and move backwards. Maybe something in there saying the vehicle has to leave the property at least twice a week, once a month.
Very hard to enforce, Counselor.
Well, and I
Very,
understand.
I mean, there is in the traffic code, the vehicle, let's say a vehicle in the street, they have to move that vehicle every 72 hours by traffic code. Very hard for the police department to enforce.
They
It's
get
a
my
hard
horse
thing to go
trailer.
around and chop tires and prove
They
that
get
it's
my horse
left.
trailer, so
Yeah.
what's the deal?
It's,
I get it, I get it. So let's strike maximum number of vehicles allowed.
Okay.
Unless you come up with a better way. I know you've been thinking about this a long time.
I'm open to anything, Counselor. We're not trying to put a burden on anybody by having to have that registration and that insurance. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is, I feel like, if you've got those vehicles, at any point, somebody could get into that vehicle and get on the street and take off because it runs. And so if they hit somebody, then what? Now, my insurance has to cover it for uninsured motorists or yours, or, I just don't think it's responsible to have an excessive amount of vehicles without registration, without insurance. And maybe this is just kind of, like I said, a preventative to keep people from accumulating so many vehicles to where it becomes a problem. Again, the officers, they use their discretion and they really do a great job. We're not looking to, if you got 5 vehicles, to say, hey, these are excessive. But, we do have a lot of properties that have 10, 12, 14 vehicles. I mean, they've got vehicles parked on every part of that property. And so it's something for the council to consider.
I'm good with it.
So I like the registration. I do.
Hold people accountable.
Yeah. And like I say, to enforce numbers, to me, is very difficult, but I understand the dilemma
I
that you're
agree.
talking about. And I don't know if you can talk about what? I mean, are they in the way of each other, or
Right.
you can't, so. But like I say, I would like to see something about in the right of way.
Yes, ma'am.
That should definitely be a no-no that's enforceable.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
26 is good.
We'll come back to
And
it,
we have an
yes.
ordinance for that. Yeah,
Okay,
so we do
we're on
take
to
care of it.
page 27, and again, you get to explain why it's removed. Section 16-41 through 106, 43.
You put the stuff in?
We crossed this out because state law mandates that we provide a 30-day notice to any vehicle that we tow. If it is not on city property is, of course, 72-hour notice. But we provide that 30-day notice. State law does not mandate that they need a hearing. It's not something that has ever been done or asked for. So it was just kind of it's never been used, and that's why we crossed it out. And like I said, they do 30-day notice. We actually post the vehicle, physically post the vehicle. We mail a notification to the property owner, and we also mail a notification to the registered vehicle owner. So they are sending out three letters, basically, posting one and sending 2 certified. And so the need for the hearing is just kind of,
Well, our registration's going to help with that, too.
I would think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That process you just mentioned, is that written somewhere?
that is actually, it is, Counselor.
Okay, I just
But the
wanted-
30-day notice is a statute, and I believe it's, gosh, I'd have to find it in here. It is specifically described. Now, the request for the hearing, I believe, was city policy at one time.
Okay. So I guess my point is, I just want to make sure that when you tell me the way you do it is actually written somewhere.
Yes, ma'am. I believe it's under, and I don't know if it's in here, the right to remove.
Okay,
We'll find it. We'll bring it in.
Yeah, we can,
Okay.
Citation.
yeah. Well, let's go on if we come up to
Okay.
it.
So.
Thank you.
You're going to bring us information on page 27. Okay. So on 28, we have stricken section 16-45. It says that the tow truck driver notifies.
So what this is asking for is basically an inventory of everything in the vehicle. a list provided to the owner, notification, all that kind of stuff, notification that we towed it. It is state law now also that whoever tows the vehicle, first off, my people, before we tow anything, they document the condition of the vehicle on a tow form, anything that's damaged. They photograph it inside and out, so that they can't say we stole the Mona Lisa out of the trunk later. But the tow truck driver is responsible after he tows to actually mail out his certifications as well. So this is something, again, old, never been done in the 20 years I've been around, 19 years, I'm sorry, that's been around, so we just took it out. And it says within 48 hours, notice of the removal of such vehicle. And like I said, they have already received the 2 letters, plus we posted it physically on the vehicle. So it's kind of redundant.
So that's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay. Page 29 has no red lettering. Page 30, we had a big line through December 31, 2022. Ms. Judy, anything on that?
Well, yeah, I question
Sunset provision.
why it had a subset.
I did not
provision
add
to
that,
begin
Counselor.
with.
I don't know if Mike added
I
that
don't
maybe.
remember. On
Is that a
page-
sunset on the whole code enforcement thing? Why is,
I didn't add
You
that.
know what?
I believe that was part of the
Oh, it looks like the chronic nuisance ordinance.
chronic nuisance ordinance when it went through, it was added. at that
Right,
time.
right.
so I
To
think we
review
need to
it.
strike that. Just needs to be a permanent,
Oh. Yeah.
yeah, strike it.
I mean, it's not intended to have a sunset provision. This part is, I mean, you're not recommending any sunset provision in any of this.
And no, ma'am, again, I don't know, I don't remember highlighting that. I'm sorry.
Well, it's good
But I
to
will
question
tell
it,
you,
though.
Counselor, in the future, before we're done, you know, we've got some chronic nuisance properties that are coming up for your consideration, you know, for the next Public Safety Committee meeting.
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, if approved by this committee, it will go through to the resolution, and then the city council will vote one way or the other. Depending on how things go, and before we're done revamping all these ordinances, there may be some things that we need to address with that. You know, some changes we need to make, because it's so new, we don't know how it's gonna go. And so, you know, it might be something we have to come back to at the end.
I feel we need to strike that. Go
Yeah.
ahead and keep the red line. Okay, page 31. Nothing red on it.
Oh, here we go.
Page 32. Nothing. Page 33. Vehicle in violation shall be towed 24-hour notice.
What this is, counselors, is we have an ordinance in place that requires a private seller of a vehicle to obtain a permit from the city. We have found it to be pretty much unenforceable, and the reason is because we have dealers that go to auctions. They may purchase 5 vehicles, but they never transfer title. They never have that vehicle registered in their name. And so we run the VIN number, we run the plates, it may come back to somebody in Louisiana. And we are having a really hard time in enforcing that ordinance, holding them accountable for putting 5 cars on a lot at Sears. Now, we're not allowed to tow them because that's private property. So you can't file on them in court. The times that we have filed on them in court, we did not obtain a conviction because the vehicle didn't belong legally to who we filed on, okay? And so there's really, it's impossible to enforce. So this is something that if we're serious about enforcing that, I think that if we were able to provide them with a 24-hour notice, if they did not comply and move that vehicle, and we can talk about the time limit too. We can talk about 48 hours or what have you. But if they don't remove those vehicles and we towed them, I don't think we would have the problem we're having now with people parking vehicles all over town for sale. And it's not your, we don't want to hinder, your normal citizen from selling their vehicle, of course. But we're talking about dealers who, again, aren't paying their gross receipts tax. We've got car dealers competing with these people, and it makes it tough, and it's not fair. They're not paying their taxes. They don't provide a warranty. It's just something, if we're serious about enforcing, we're going to have some more teeth for that ordinance.
So I remember that we did pass that they had to come get a green sticker and put it in their window.
Yes, ma'am. Basically, it's a red permit, yeah.
Okay, red. So if that is seen in the window, do you walk away from that and not put this sticker on?
Ma'am, what this sticker is for is because right now, what we do is we write a handwritten notice, put it underneath the windshield, which is if we can't contact them or they're wise to us, which most of them are by
Is that
now.
a
We have
handbill?
actually met them at the location.
Is that
They get rid of it and they walk away from it. And we thought, well, maybe if we put a pretty good sized orange sticker on that vehicle saying, hey, we're gonna tow this thing that they can't just whip off and throw in the street, it could help.
Well, and it, like you said, it won't come off very easily and
Yes,
it'll
ma'am.
deter the buyers.
Yes, ma'am.
And like Judy asked, is that a handbill when you write your ticket?
Oh,
He missed it.
Don't put it under, yeah, I didn't think he heard it.
I'm sorry, I
Don't put it
didn't
under
hear.
the windshield. Stick it.
That's funny. I'm good with that. That may need to be refined a little bit better.
And again, Counselor, this is gonna be something we're gonna have to talk to the lawyer about, because now, like I said, state statute says to tow off a private property, we have to provide them with a 30-day notice. So if he says that is gonna come into play in a situation like this, I mean, it may be we may not be able to do something like this anyway. So again, this is gonna be something for the lawyer
I think
to
so.
make that call if you guys decide you wanna pursue this.
Okay. You good with that, Miss Judy?
Yeah, I was going to say, wait a minute. I wonder if he could, like you say, since he doesn't have anything else to do, if he could look at all of Article 11, which is in our packets, page 31 and 32 and 33, just because they all tie together.
Sure.
So, because I think this is a real problem. I think it's, yeah.
So we'll move on to 34. Proper permit. Yard signs, yard sales, excuse me. Yeah, we have a lot of people that don't do that.
Obtain permit.
Yeah, this is, I believe we put it there. This is all covered. We don't need to change anything there. It's just that it's in a different section than
Okay,
the
so
16.
it's okay.
Oh,
Same, it looks like where we're at now, counselors, are all the ordinances Mike discussed earlier when he said they weren't in the 16 section that we were gonna cover. But what you're seeing now are things in other sections of the code book, under different section numbers that code enforcement does enforce. Okay?
Okay, so that's page 34. Is that the rest of the packet, is what you're speaking of? Sorry. So on page 34, I have noticed a city to obtain proper permit, also 16-7, so you said that's in another
Right,
section.
yeah, we don't need any changes there.
Okay.
Now, on the next page 35, there are some things, and whether or not this is the section to include it in, or if the city attorney would like to do something else with it, these are the kind of problems we are running into that kind of falls under this same section.
Madam Chair, if you look at the front of your packet, I
Yes, sir.
included this one here, and it shows all the different sections that I included in your packet, so we could. And I think I got them in order. Wouldn't guarantee it, but I think I did.
Yeah, well, kind of, sort of. Yeah, we'll let you
Yeah,
slide.
maybe.
Okay, so we're looking at section 8, erection of tents, on page 35. Okay. Judy, do you have any questions on these?
I apologize, counselors. It looks like it says on camps. That should have been or.
I wondered if that was.
I have fat fingers.
That one I did.
Okay, you did see that one? I can't spell. so-
Do that. It
Yes,
kind
ma'am.
of bothers me that the title of section 8-1 is erection of tents, et cetera.
Right, right. And you know,
And-
we could talk about maybe having the city attorney create an entirely new section for some of this.
That's what I'm wondering,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
you're adding several different things that I agree with, but I just wonder if they're under the right title. So maybe it's
Right.
changing the title, not
Yes,
changing
ma'am.
the
Yeah.
placement.
And a new section may be that, since we're continuing to get more tents and homelessness and stuff like that.
Yes, ma'am.
So that may be appropriate to have another section. I'll leave that up to Parker. Judy, are you okay with that so far?
Yeah, I'd like, again, a little further explanation and a little broader title for that section.
Okay, page 36, there's nothing on it. 37, no red. 38, no red. Panhandling ordinance on 39.
I'll tell you, counselors, this is something that, I mean, I don't know if it's something for code enforcement or the Roswell Police Department to address, or us maybe in conjunction, one department with the other, but, you know, it's a problem. You've seen it around town. The panhandling, again, we're not trying to criminalize homelessness or anything like that, but we've got them making messes on corners. We've got them standing in medians. We have them asking for money on properties without permission, things like that. So, you know, the question mark is there just because it has become a problem and it's getting worse, and it might be something that the council might want to consider.
And we don't have one.
And not in my book, ma'am. I can't
don't
speak
think
for
we do,
the
and I
police
think-
department, but not in our nuisance book. No, not for code enforcement.
I think there's some concern also, if I'm not mistaken, about the legality of such a thing, or,
We'll have to get Parker to dig into this one some more.
yeah. Because I think other communities have had the problem and not figured out exactly how they.
Right, right.
Bill, you're aware. Haven't we talked?
It's a perennial thing, and it usually comes down to trying to maintain safe corridors, transportation, and
Yes.
pedestrian ways. And so if there's if they're hindering that, that's usually where it goes. But the ones that say you can't ask for money are almost always tossed out. I mean, that's your right, but
That's all right.
that's how it's come down. It was a large problem in other places I've been.
Right.
But it always usually comes down to maintaining free passage of cars and people.
Yeah, so that's the way we have to look at it. Yeah, but I think that's another Parker one, like you said.
Yeah, it is, and that's also what's on 40. So that may be a Parker thing. Would the municipal league know about that? I'm sure they have something on
Yeah,
there.
they'll have resources.
Okay. 41, nothing. 42, nothing. And then 1806. Okay, malicious intent.
Good for that.
Okay, tampering of digital. Oh, this is for the water meters.
Right.
That's going under nuisance too, isn't it? How are we doing with that? Consistently playing with them all the time now still?
You know, ma'am, at first, my officers were responding every day to water meter tampering complaints, every day and several a day for a couple months probably. They have seemed to, you know, after it's documented and a police report is filed, the water department is sending these people an invoice for the damages that they've done.
Good.
It has went really well. They have got it under control. I don't believe we've responded to one in probably a month.
Good.
So I think word's getting around that, hey, you can't beat these things, and if you do try, you're going to end up with a $450 bill. And so it's worked really well. It's probably I'm really proud that the council put this in place because it's worked really well.
Well, and this would be a perfect time for them to mess with it because they're at home. So if they're not messing with it, that's a
Right.
good thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So there's no red on any of this, so what does that tell me? We're not going to mess with this at all?
Oh, what we did, we included everything that they enforce, whether or not they had changed some of these, like the water tampering, it is a new section that we may not need to change anything. We just want to bring it all forward and have the discussion. If there was something that you knew of that was an issue, or if they had something, then we could discuss it at this meeting and maybe tweak it. If it doesn't need to be tweaked, we don't want to correct it if it's working.
Okay.
Just
So-
wanted to make you aware of the ordinances and the sections of the code that they enforce.
Okay. Well, since
So-
this one seems to be working, we don't want to mess with it. Are we right?
Yeah, Madam Chair, these have not been codified into code? Is that, I mean, they're too new, I guess, to have.
I don't believe they have. I can check with Sharon to find out. I think they do that once.
I mean,
I
they don't do it
asked.
very often.
I
guess.
asked a couple of weeks ago, but I don't remember what she told me now.
Okay.
I was thinking she said once a year, but it may have been twice a year, but I don't remember.
I don't know. But, okay.
I'll make me another note.
Okay, and the next one does not have any red letters in it, so it's our last one before our police department monthly, so.
And you'll notice on page 20, or 49 at the bottom, or in the middle there, that's the original ordinance for the nuisance, and that's the one that included the sunset provision.
Oh, I
that's
see
where
that.
that comes from.
Okay. You're going to strike that, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, you're good with that one, Miss Judy?
Yes.
Okay. So, that takes care of that until next time, and then we go over it again.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? Okay.
And I would just encourage you, please, if there's something that you don't feel comfortable with, or we need to do some more research, like I said, I have no issues with this taking 6 months. I would rather really discuss it, debate it, have some good discussions, and come out of it with a document that is really beneficial to the community and beneficial to the officers that are having to enforce it.
Thank you. I agree.
I bet Miss Judy goes over it again for next
I
time.
will.
I had a feeling that might happen. Okay, so now we're on non-action items. 4, there are none. Previously, we asked if anybody had questions on any of the reports. There seemed to be none there. I guess my announcement is that our next meeting is not on here. June 16th is what she said. So June 16th is our next meeting. Same time, same place. Hope we all get to come. Public participation. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. Do we have anybody?
Jeff left, so apparently nobody signed up to speak.
Okay.
Jeff's gone, yeah.
Okay. So we have no public participation. I'm good with what's going on. We're all good? Okay. So we will end the meeting at 5:39.
No, nobody, okay. And Madam Chair, just so you know, we're including in all our packets the information to the public if they want to sign up, and instructions from IT department how to get online, if they want to ask a question or be a part of the meetings, we're providing that information to them for every meeting.
I watched OBT this morning. And that was, yeah, this afternoon. Very interesting. So, we're done.
If I can get everyone to sign the.
No, ma'am, you have evidence right there in the camera. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am, I'm sure we can on the way out. Thank you, Savino
Thank you,
Sanchez.
counselors, for your help. Thank you.
I like seeing your smiling face. Thank you. It's all good.